سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك سبحان رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are in the discussion of who am I, how I became, why I became, etc., as advertised by our Ustad. Where's not here? He doesn't already come to speak of the insan. Okay. We commence with the discussion of the philosophy of the creation of man. And obviously that's the first story which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Holy Quran in terms of the history of man. And this is the first story mentioned in the Holy Quran. But the really important point I will put across today as the introduction, because you've already gone through this, just purely a revision, is that the first story, which is the history of man and the origins of man, so to speak, deals fundamentally, because the story of man is dealt with in 7 surahs of the Quran. Write that down. It's mentioned in 7 surahs of the Quran. It starts off in Surah Al-Baqarah, then goes to Surah Al-A'raf, then goes to Surah Al-Hijr, which is in the 14th parah, then it goes to Surah Al-Kahf, and a brief mentioning there. Then it is in, Surah Bani Israel, before that, the Surah Al-Isra, then Surah Al-Kahf, then Surah Taha, and then Surah Sad. So the story of man is mentioned in 7 different surahs or surah of the Holy Quran. But the story begins in Surah Al-Baqarah, and it is primarily focused on the first human archetype, or the first creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of the Homo sapien or the human species, and that is Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. Now there are 2 distinct priorities which are given in the first story, which is that it fundamentally focuses on the human archetype or the Khalifatullah fil ard. And understand that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts off this, He starts off with the most evolved of human beings that have and are and will continue to be till the day of Qiyamah, and those are the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Anbiya alayhi salatu. You can't find more evolved human beings in creation than the Anbiya. So when Allah says, وَإِنْ إِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, and remember and commemorate and observe and celebrate when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made His declaration, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, that I am placing on earth my vicegerent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here primarily spoke about a prophet of Allah. And the station of Khilafah at its ultimate position belongs to Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam in particular. So although we may be able to achieve this status through kasab, through effort, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wassalam received this through hasab, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowing it upon them. And as we go into the story of Adam alayhi salam, we speak about the mithaq which was taken from the prophets, etc. Right? So understand the vicegerency is fundamentally bestowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Anbiya alayhi salam, and the rest of the human beings need to aspire to it. So the first story deals with Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, in particular in his spiritual station as a vicegerent of Allah, and in his position as a Nabiullah, as a prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, it deals with a very high station which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted to Adam alayhi salam, in that he precedes Malaika in terms of status, right? And all of the other species, and here the species of jinn represented by Iblis himself, the what do we call the salt of the earth, so to speak, Iblis La'in, right? And it speaks about the superiority of Adam alayhi salam, and his superiority doesn't necessarily come from what we would call in modern day terms his religiosity. It's not through his tasbih and his tahmeed and his taqdees and his tahleel only. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that because Malaika commented and they presented their observation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Malaika is لَا يَعْصُونَ اللَّهَ مَا أَمَرْهُمْ وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. They are creations which possess intelligence, they are analytical, they have certain qualities in there which which outstrip human beings, right? But they said, وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ, Right? We make your tasbih, we make your taqdees and so on. We are more eligible for bicentenary because we don't commit sin. We do not disobey you. We obey everything that you do. Allah said, قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And Allah said, thereafter I know that which you know not. And then He said, the superiority that was granted to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam is fundamentally, in spite of his mental and emotional, right, idiosyncrasies, or his mental and emotional shortcomings, which the Malaika openly declared. Right? And corruption in particular, وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء, and the predisposition to a point of losing his humanity by engaging in acts of violence which may lead to the shedding of blood. Allah said He has one quality in Him that, which if He can access to its full capacity, can make Him even higher in status than angels, which is the quality of knowledge. So the station is the station of Khilafah, vicegerency, and this is achieved through acquiring the position or being in a position of knowledge. To such a point that Adam alayhi salatu, who so to speak, literally now the new kid on the block, right, is who becomes the muallim of malakut. Muallimul mala'ikat. Right? Because, there's a wrong tendency here. Amongst the older scholars, they say that Iblis was muallimul malakut. He wasn't. Adam is the muallim. Adam is the teacher of the angels. He taught the angels those things which the angel did not know about. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I am the teacher of Adam. And Adam is my student. Can you imagine what will be the status of the one who's been taught by God Himself? Right? He said, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. Allah said, I taught Adam alayhi salam the names of all things. Allah didn't say, I taught of some things. No. He gave him a complete type of knowledge in terms of the names and the nature of all things. Thereafter, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when there was the union between body and soul of Adam alayhi salatu, because he's a composite of body and soul. What's our famous line? It's not I think, therefore I am. It is I am, therefore I think. Okay? Now, one more important point from this one here, which we must understand in terms of the human being, is that, in various other ideologies, right, whether it's Buddhist or whether it's various strains of Hinduism and all parts, the Far East, Eastern ideologies, whether it's Taoism or whether it's Taoism and all of Shintoism and all of these things here. And all of those people who aspire towards a life of monasticism, right, in order to rid themselves of the desires of the flesh, which is with regards to, sexual desires or desires for appetite in terms of food, drink, etc., 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 right? Quran does not subscribe to the fact that the human body, this body, as temporary as it may be, which also is a misnomer, I'll explain that to you just now, right, as being bad. Everybody else looks down, in terms of other ideologies, looks down on the body and looks down upon the fact that we have these innate desires, which is eating, sleeping, drinking, right? Sleeping is very important. We need the sleep, right? And our sexual desires, etc., etc. And we are, we have these things in us, right? And they look at that these are all of the body. So we've got to free ourselves from the body. The body is something that is an instrument of sin. What they used to say? What was it called? They used to, And in Christianity, they blame Sayyida wa Ummina Hawa alayha salatu wassalam for having exposed us to those natural appetites in us. And they say, Eve was the gateway to evil. Because she is the one who prompted Adam alayhi salatu to eat from the forbidden fruit or from the forbidden tree, which is false. Now, coming back to this fact here, this body of yours is as, and I'm using this word in terms of a generality, is as sacred in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as would be what we would call your mind and your soul. It is sacred. There is no such thing that, there is no sanctity to this human body. There is a great deal of sanctity which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted to the human body. So don't ever think for one moment that this body that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted you is of no significance whatsoever, and it is merely a vehicle, right? Or a portal through which the soul journeys through this phase in life. It's not that only. Had that been the case then, in other ideologies like Hinduism and whatever it is there, they use the element of fire to cremate the body. Why? Because that's their way of saying that, the body had no real value, so by virtue of burning it through the element of fire, because man has been created from dust, right? Finally, the soul receives mukti or salvation, right, from being entrapped in this body. Now, the Quranic view on this, in terms of our appetites and desires, like the Christianity said, refutes it. Secondly, the fact that the body has no value and is merely an encasing and a cage for the soul to be enclosed in and to be imprisoned in until it's freed through death, is also false. Because had that been the case there, Allah would not have, if Allah wants, preserved the bodies of Anbiya alayhi salam. Number one. Number two, on the day of Qiyamah, when the وَنُفِخَ فِي السُّورِ ثُمَّ نُفِخَ فِيهِ أُخْرَى, and when the second trumpet is blown, what's going to happen? We are all going to be resurrected. And what are we going to be resurrected as? Allah going to be resurrected as our souls. Allah is going to resurrect us, body, mind and soul. And we will be, so to speak, adults. We're not going to come out there from our graves there in the form of babies then wait, because I know it's from Sina Al-Fasana, it's on day of Qiyamah, but that's not going to happen that you're going to start growing up. You're going to come out, right, unclothed and uncircumcised in your original Adamic state. So if there was no value to the human body, Allah in His infinite wisdom could have decided, get rid of this body. We don't need it anymore. It just was merely a vehicle for, for keeping the soul on planet Earth, right? And that's it. It's over now. Qiyamah took place. I've changed the earth, so change the human being too. Allah said no. And that same body of yours is going to be re-engineered, right, for the life which is eternal, which is in Jannah. Of course, you do know that all of you people who are trying to keep your hair in Jannah, you're going to have no hair. You'll all be tattoos, you know that, huh? You're aware of that? Yeah. You'll all be tattoos in Jannah. Right? Tafseer says, I think there's a hadith to this, but I'm not too sure, I can't remember. Last time I knew it was about 15, 20 years ago. Okay, but I think there's a hadith to this fact as well, that you won't have hair in Jannah as well. Right? So people who are born now can say, look, I've already reached, the heavenly state from the Okay. So, sorry? Yes. Okay. And of course, you'll be between the age of, this is the hadith, between the age of 33, 34, the ideal age. Most of you women have been in that age now for the past, 15, 20 years now? Right? So already you're the Jannatis, right? So anyway, please understand that the value of the human body is very great, and the sanctity of the human body is very great in Islam, unlike other ideologies like Christianity in terms of the shortcomings or the needs of the body, and in terms of Hinduism, etc., right? So Allah said the station of Adam alayhi salam is vicegerency, and the position is acquired is because of knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and now all of you prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. Anyway, that's Surah Al-Baqarah. Right? And it focused fundamentally on the human archetype. Yes, last week we went to Surah Al-A'raf. Surah Al-A'raf now, the story comes to a different level. Allah said, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقَنَاكُمْ. Aisha started opening that here, really with full expression and everything. Yeah. And shout at the police while you are taking it, don't forget. Right? وَلَقَدْ خَلَقَنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. Indeed, we have created you. ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. And we have given you form. ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is now bringing to your attention that now He's shifting the focus away from Adam alayhi salam, and He is informing you that your creation, in terms of how you have been fashioned, etc., is on a similar basis as of that, or the fundamentals are similar to that of Adam alayhi salam. Obviously, Adam alayhi salam's creation is different. He was created from kun. He was created without a father and without a mother. And through the normal process of procreation, which takes place on planet Earth. Therefore, he's the human archetype. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says now, in terms of the fashioning of the human body, and in terms of the stages of your acquisition, and the stages of your own personal development, you will see that you also follow in the footsteps of Adam alayhi salatu. But it works the other way around. In the sense that Allah declared the Khilafah of Adam alayhi salam. Meaning, oh human being, you have been created, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And if you fulfill the mandate of وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, which means I've only created the species of jinn and human beings to worship me, if you fulfill that mandate, then you would have fulfilled the requirements of vicegerency. And this can only be achieved through ilm. So the human being also goes through the spirituality of the human being. Right? Which is Adam alayhi salam's spiritual position. The intellectuality or the intellectual status of Adam alayhi salam, which is of Adam alayhi salam, which is his ilm. And then is the physicality of Adam alayhi salam. Allah says, in Jannah, O Adam, Aya Adam, uskun anta wa zawjuka al-Jannah, wa kula minha ragadan haythu shi'tuma. Allah says, eat. Allah says, eat. So, if eating was something which is a need of the human body, if eating was something that was, antithesis to spirituality and antithesis to your soul or whatever it is, Allah wouldn't have said to Adam alayhi salam in the most beautiful place and the most illuminated and loftiest place in creation, which is Jannah. Allah said, no, free Jannah from food and drink. But Quran doesn't have that. Quran tells you, no. Quran says Jannah is full of those things which delight fundamentally the human body. Am I right? All the food and drink and وَلَحْمِ طَيْرٍ مِمَّا يَشْتَهُونَ and and all of those things that كُلُوا وَشْرَبُوا هَنِيًّا بِمَا كُنْتُمْ right? All of that is for the delight of the body. So if there was no reward to be given to the body, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't tell you enjoy all of these things in paradise, because those are things fundamentally for the body. So Allah is telling Adam and said, no, this is fine. This is fine. Come sit here, man. Why are you sitting in there? You just get there's not this empty chair here. Sit here. Right? Yeah, come with this side. Just put your chair there. Right? So understand this, because for many of us, and I think nowadays, today's runners, coaches, and gurus of spirituality, etc. Blah 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 blah. Right? The whole issue is no. You need to get rid of this body. You need to abstain from all that. No, Islam doesn't subscribe to this at all. That's why Allah said, eat as much as you want, O Adam. With one distinction, that he could travel wherever he wanted to in Jannah. And as I explained last week, that he is on the levels of consciousness. All levels of consciousness were equally accessible to Adam alayhi salam, as opposed to where we are at right now, where we can only access a certain level of consciousness depending on the state that we are in. So if you're in a waking state, is what you call, I'm in a conscious state. And if you are in a sleeping state, you will say, I'm in an unconscious state, I'm living on the subconscious level. Right? Of course, the subconscious can work, when you're wide awake as well, but that's not another issue right now. And what happens is that you find yourself in different states. Right? Generally, you are in theta state, right? Which is basically just before you fall off to sleep. This is when your ruh now leaves your body, so to speak, temporarily, and you go on Wi-Fi. You got the point? Otherwise, you got a full. What do you call that anymore? Where is it? No, man. Oh, man. When you connect it directly to your modem? Huh? LAN, Ethernet or something, right? Full connection. Wi-Fi doesn't give you the same connection, you understand? Because this one here is full day, so you're getting the full 5G or whatever it's called. Right? So now when your soul leaves your body, what happens? What happens? The soul now is free. And this whole idea again, that the soul is not free, and the soul is confined to the body, is nonsense. It's nonsense. 40% of the time, the soul is running free. Or 45% of the time. When you're fast asleep, how many hours in a day? 8 hours in a day. What's operational? The body is still. The body is stuck on the bed. And where's the soul? The soul is moving. And as I said, who said that the soul is inside the body? What I said, the body is? Which basically means that they are. So the soul is not something which is confined in this human body and stuck inside there in the jail. The soul has its freedom. for 8 hours or so, plus minus at night. And in that space of time, all you experience in terms of what you know as the ability of your soul is what we call in a dream state. And in that dream state, then you unlock the potential which is in you, or you have a temporary glimpse of what real potential your soul has. So your soul is active at night, right? And your body is active during the day. Because we are unable to create a connection between the two, right? Therefore, we have a problem and we create this dichotomy of body and soul. But Allah has told you already that there is a way to bring the two together, where you can access the power of your soul and access the power of your body. And how is that possible? Give me one example. I'm talking about procedure. How you can, what you got to bridge the gap that exists currently between body and soul. Meditation, yeah, okay. You're wasting my time. Right? Firstly, it's layl and nahar, night and day. Night and day can also what you call it, can also be attributed to two stages of consciousness. The state of consciousness when we are awake during the day, and the state of consciousness that we refer to when we are fast asleep, which we call I'm unconscious now, or I'm in my Indian subconscious world, etc., etc. Now, the Prophet of Allah ﷺ and the Quran tells you that if you can access those moments in the night, وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. Right? Allah said, if you can access those moments when your soul should be actually be engaging in freedom, and when you are fast asleep and you're on either theta waves or beta waves or alpha waves or delta waves or whatever it is there, right? Allah said, if you can access it, and if you can bring three hearts together, you can bridge that gap between the experience of the soul and the body. Come on, I will make it even easier for you now. Finally. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ. Allah particularly described the entire process. تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ. That their sides leave their beds. Which Allah is telling me that it should be an ideal time. You should know me by now, right? So anyway, now, amongst the Hindu philosophers and the sages and the yogis and whatever it is there, right, they will tell you, like we said, like the Prophet of Allah himself has stated, he said there is a moment every night, the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, descends as it behoves him to descend, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And there is a moment in every night which is equivalent in terms of his spiritual power to the night of Qadr. You know that? You do know that? Right? And Allah said, is there anyone seeking this? There my guarantee is. Anyone seeking forgiveness? Check it out the hadith in Sahih Bukhari or something. So there's a moment. Okay. Now what happens? He said that it's equivalent to Qadr. Which is what? Meaning the spiritual blessing that you can acquire in 1,000 months if you are there in the zone at that time. Not only in Ramadan, every single night, you can access 1,000, right? Access spirituality which would have otherwise taken you 1,000 months to acquire. So what happens there? You get all the spirituality just all in one, right? And it's given to you if you were there at the right time, at the right place. So what are the three things that need to be connected in order for you to bridge the gap between body and soul, so to speak? Meaning consciousness and what we call the subconscious world, or the world of the unconscious. The tahajjud is the heart of the night. That's the key part. The heart of the night. And I explained to you the heart of the night just now. And number two is the heart of the Quran, which is Yasin. And the heart of the human being. If these are accessed at that time, which is every single night, what happens? You harness that spiritual energy which would otherwise take you 1,000 months to acquire. And why is Yasin the hardest? 3 plus 6 is what? Yasin is the surah. I don't get into numerology. What I'm giving you the idea here is that Yasin is the 36th surah of the Holy Quran. Right? In terms of mathematics, in just terms of mathematics, 3 plus 6 is? We'll figure that one out. Okay, so you harness these 3, and what happens is that you access that, and you make the other spiritual centers that are existent in you, like you have 5 senses existent in you, to become activated by the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, as I said, let me tell you why I said this. Some of the yogis and the sages in all the other, some of the philosophies, they tell you there's a certain time at night. And when I had read, I had seen some months ago something, one guy said it's 3:40 in the morning. But it's not for the southern hemisphere. Just to clarify. So don't wake up in 3:40 in the morning and think, whoa. Like something's going to happen to me, right? It ain't going to happen.
Any time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Any time of the year.
Yeah. No, but that's for the northern hemisphere, not for the southern hemisphere. Right? So basically, is the time of tahajjud. When tahajjud ends, right, that's peak God time. Meaning, the latest part, the early hours of the morning. Right? That's when, what's secreted there? I always get confused. Serotonin or melatonin. Which one is it? Serotonin or melatonin? At night. No, not to fall off to sleep. There's some hormone which is secreted there, which helps the body to completely energize and everything is secreted. Melanin. That's the one. Or whatever. Okay, no, it can't be melanin. Melanin means for skin, man. Huh? No, it's not that. It's must be growth hormone. Am I right? So anyway, that takes place at that part. Now, so the yogis, and you know what's it called? Amongst the yogis or the sages, it's called Brahma Mudra. It's called Brahma, which is the greatest God, right? And it's God's time. They actually call it God's time. And what do you call it? Tahajjud. You understand? So there is a moment wherein body, mind, and soul, right, can be accessed to and brought to a higher level, which is through the practice of tahajjud. And now what happens? Right? People think, but there was no meditation inside there. There were nothing happened there, etc. Right? All of those things. We discuss this some other time. Point was, you can either use the energies which are within you from your body, or the power of your mind, or access the power of your mind, or attempt to access the power of your soul, or you can just plug into the power of God. Saw the difference? You saw the difference? Go and study all of this Vedic ideologies and Buddhist ideologies and Taoist ideologies and Buddhist ideology. It's all about stilling the mind. It's all about gaining mastery over the self, gaining mastery over one's desires, gaining mastery over one's body, gaining mastery over sleep. And Islam says, or do all of that, gain mastery over all of that there, or submit as a slave to God. So you can choose the path of self-mastery or God's slavery. What happens with the slave? He eats what his master feeds him. He wears what his master gives him. He does what his master tells him. Any responsibility on his head? No. All you can do is, you can master your body, wake up at so early in the morning there, and do all your asanas, and do all your poses, and do all of these things. Carry on, mashallah. Good luck to you. Or you can just plug into Allah's power. Plug into the power of God. Right? You can sit there whether you do shamanic rituals or Buddhist rituals, gongs and bong and whatever, I'm not mocking any of this. I understand, just making this easy for you guys to understand. You've got to have that in there. You can take your bowl like this one here until you get so many herds and etc. Yeah. Right? Or you can say, aswatakum bil Quran. Or you can beautify your voice with the Quran, which is operating at 963 hertz. Someone asked me the other day, how do you access the pineal gland? I said, well, don't go to Pine Street, you're not going to find it there. It used to be Pine Street, right? How do you access the pineal gland? So they said, no, I read something at 963 hertz. If you listen to something at 963 hertz, then you can access your pineal gland, etc. You know what they call it, third eye. Right? I said, no, very good. I said, yeah, easiest way, as far as I'm concerned, right? Asma'ul Husna. Wallahu alladhi la. Have you heard that those Arab dhikr that they do? You know, in the various tonal qualities that they have. I'm just giving you one example. I mean, it's not cast in stone. But 963 hertz. Again, where you got 963 hertz from? I said 9 and 6 is what? 15. 15 and 3 is what? 18. 1 and 8 is? Mathematically speaking. So 99 names of Allah. 99. I'm trying to put this across to you because we have plenty, and it's happening, you know, throughout our community now, and I've been researching for a while now. Like people come up with all of these scientific ideas and, you know, things proven through science to show how great this exercise is and that is, and our people get like, wow, why we don't have this in Islam? I said, yeah, Al-Asma'ul Husna 99. Go and recite the thing. See the benefits of it. Go see read the benefits of it there. Recite it in that voice, tonal quality. Half of us don't want to recite Quran loudly. And the Prophet of Allah encouraged the recitation of Quran loudly. Why? What does it do? How many senses does it affect? The Prophet of Allah would recite it in Salah. Right? And if he heard some verses about Jahannam, then he would weep, seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? If he heard the verse about Jannah or whatever it is, he would seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jannah, and so on there. So what was happening? All that he was doing was, he wasn't unlocking his own personal power, he was just accessing divine power. You saw the difference? If you've understood this difference here, you've understood what it means to become a Khalifa of Allah, which is different from every other ideology. You don't have to work on unlocking your own potential. All that you do is working on accessing divine power. That's all. And it is done with this. And all of those things that you're talking about, all of the ideologies, come to me one day, I'll give you not all the answers. Nobody has all the answers. But I'll give you, so to speak, that in the equivalence to all of these things. And you say, what are you talking about? What are you people are talking about? Right? All you people want to do, dieting now. No, what was the greatest thing? The 16 is to 8. Am I right, Adina? You don't know? 16 is to 8. Intermittent fasting. Qassam. Wow! Oish! Unbelievable. And you'll think so much away this. Or whatever it is. Right? Really? 16 is to 8. Intermittent fasting. Great. When we were told that day, no, you don't need to do that on certain cosmically charged days, like the 13th and the 14th and the 15th, in consonance with the cosmic orientation through the lunar cycle, etc. What do you do? All of these just there. We just lunatics when you're talking about the lunar cycle. You understand? All of them, we are living in this universe, we are part and parcel of it. Right? And all of those things affect us. Right? It affects our moods. The word lunacy comes from people, who used to go crazy during the full moon, because the attraction and the pull of the moon was greater. Right? It affects menstrual cycles, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you are a human being. It affects you. That's why the Prophet of Allah said, I fast on the 13th, 14th, and the 15th. Ayyam Bayl, the white days. Why did he speak about that? Why did he say, no, fast on? And sometimes you say, no, I fast intermittent fasting people, Monday and Thursdays. Intermittent fasting means you fast on certain days. Like a fast, right? You consume less food, and thereafter a few days, 2 break. Tuesday, Wednesday, take a break. Thursday, you fast again. That's what intermittent fasting was, right? So this body has a great deal of value. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about it in terms of honor. Now, when you come to Surah Al-A'raf, before I go into another tangent, right? When you come to Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. Then Allah said, ثُمَّ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. Now understand one thing there. Your father Adam alayhi salatu wasalam was made as a Kaaba. Kaaba means as a point of focus and direction, not as an object of worship. So like the Kaaba is the direction in which you face, in order to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In a very similar way, at that moment, Adam alayhi salatu became the focal point in which Malaika were instructed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to use him as a qibla in order to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then what happened? Istakbara, illa Iblis. Istakbara wa kana min al-kafirin. Now the story shifts to Iblis and his animosity and enmity to man. Malaika already presented their view that man has certain shortcomings in him, right, which are emotional and mental in nature, which doesn't make him eligible for vicegerency. But out of all of them, Malaika came to realize that there is something in Adam that we don't see. In spite of seeing this superiority of Adam in terms of ilm, Iblis was such a stupid that he saw that Allah said, I taught Adam these things here, and Adam has taught this to angels. Iblis still refused, and he says, can you read Aisha? I don't know, there's so many verses, I don't know which one we're reading right now. قال إبليس ما منعك أن تسجد؟ قال لما كل أجل لبشر خلقتهم. 20 Surah Al-Araf. Right, first few pages. Prostrate to Adam. Anybody who has it? Carry on, Bismillah, carry on. Verse 12. Okay, istakbara, I can't remember the exact verse. Istakbara wa kana min al-kafirin. He said, قال أنا خير من خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. So Adam's first stupidity wasn't his claim only that, you know what, I am better than him, I have been created from the element of fire. Sorry, Iblis's first stupidity wasn't that his claim that I have been created from fire and Adam, the element of fire, and Adam has been created from the element of earth. Right? But his first stupidity was that after seeing the intellectual ability of Adam alayhi salatu, he was still blinded by the greatness of Adam. So that's his first stupidity. That's his first act of ignorance. The second one was an act of arrogance. How's that? Did you understand that? The first one, when he was unable to see, when it was clearly shown to him how superior Adam alayhi salatu is in terms of knowledge, that was an act of ignorance on his part, that he still didn't get the point. And the next point was, his next act of stupidity was when he said, قَالَ أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِنْ I am better than him, خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. I've been created from fire, and he's been created from the element of earth. That was his act of arrogance. Now, why was that stupidity on his part? Why was it stupidity on his part? Generally, the idea would be, or the general idea is, that fire is superior to earth. The element of fire is superior to the element of earth. And how many elements are there? Four essential elements. Earth, wind, air, and fire. Not that problem, right? Just to clarify. No, it's before your time. Okay, the first thing is that in terms of the nature of fire, there's 10 reasons according to the Mufassirun why the earth element is greater than the fire element, in spite of the fact that we feel, or we have this misconception that fire is superior to air, right? Possibly because of the fear that it creates, right? Number one, that in terms of the nature of the element of fire, the nature of fire is to destroy. The nature of fire is destruction, right? And okay, before I forget this, one mistake of Iblis was he said, "Ana khayru min khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min tin." I've been created from the element of fire, and he's been created from the element of earth. He only looked at one aspect of Adam alayhi salam, and that was the material with which he has been made. His materiality, meaning he's made from the element of earth, right? The second and he omitted three he omitted. The first one was, he only looked at the first one, his material. He's been created from earth, no problem. But Iblis, second mistake you made was that you didn't see the physicality of Adam, or how Adam has been formed and been given due proportion, right? And how he has been given shaped, how it's been shaped and formed and given due proper. الَّذِي خَلَقَكَ فَسَوَّاكَ فَعَدَلَكَ وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَاكُمْ ثُمَّ صَوَّرْنَاكُمْ. And we have formed you. So you didn't look at the physicality of Adam alayhi salam and the manner in which he has been created. And with the style, let's use the word style with which he has been created. So he forgot the physicality. Then he didn't look at the procedure of the creation of Adam alayhi salam. The procedure of the creation of Adam alayhi salam wasn't the way malaika khuliqatul malaikatu min nur. Allah gave you a detailed procedure of the creation of Adam alayhi salatu wasalam. And fourthly, you forgot the reality of Adam, which was what was the reason for which he was created. So you only looked at one thing and you said, no, I'm better than him. You didn't look at the other three things. Why have the malaika have been created for a purpose as well? Malaika have been created with material, with the type of material. خُلِقَتِ الْمَلَائِكَةُ مِن نُورٍ وَخَلَقَ الْجَانَّ مِن مَارِجٍ مِن نَارٍ. And Jan, who is the father, the archetype of the jinns, has been created from smokeless fire. Right? So they have a material, they also have a procedure in terms of the creation. They have a certain form. Malaika is fatir samawati or ja'il malaika ruslan uli ajnihatin mathna wa thulatha wa ruba'. They have 2, 3, 4 wings. The angels have 2, 3, 4 wings. So they have a different creation. They can morph into human beings as jinns can, right? And you have jinns who have different capacities, right? They can go deep into the fire, deep into the sea, etc. Although they have the element of fire, they can وَالْوَشَيَاطِينَ كُلَّ بَنَّاءٍ وَغَوَّاصٍ, right? So Allah said they have a materiality. So Adam, he ignored all of that. He only looked at one aspect, which is being created from the element of earth. Now the first thing is that it is the nature, according to the Tafseer here, right? Is the nature of fire, that anything that comes into contact with it, it destroys and it burns. Right? And on the other hand, when something comes into contact with the earth, it doesn't destroy it. It actually protects it. Right? And you could say that the fire is hiding, is deceptive. You entrust something to the fire, it will destroy it. Whereas if you entrust something to the earth, it will preserve it. Dig into the earth, put a treasure down there. Right? Put all your upang down there. Dig it up, after a couple of years, you would have found, what good the cable theft it. They took away your box as well. Right? Okay, but it is Amin. The earth is Amin. Place a house on it, right? It will take the burden of the weight of the house and make you dwell in it. So the nature of fire is destruction, whereas the nature of earth is construction. I'm making this as I'm going, so you can find I'm not finding the rhyming words, you can help me out, right? Okay? And number 2, alright? Allah has created for human beings and for animals, right? And for all of the creation out there, all of their provisions and their rizq from the earth, as well as all of those things that they would require for their clothing, cotton, etc., etc. All come, cotton. I did that in, you remember you did that in standard 2, standard 3, that you come with cotton and everything, how they dye cotton in this plant, and you should do that in science, right? All of that has been created from earth. You can't create anything in fire. So earth is the one that is responsible for creation, right? Number 2. I'm doing it very quickly because otherwise you'll get too long, right? Third thing is that if you put one seed, or you put one seed in the earth, right? The earth magnifies it, and the earth increases it to a point from one seed you'll get hundreds of fruit. From one seed you'll get thousands of trees. What is the tree? Give me a definition of a tree. The tree is the potential of the seed realized. How's that? The tree is the potential of the tree. So a seed is a potential of the tree realized. Oh man, you know that. Invariably. You got the point. You're all put nazar on what I said, that's why. Right? The tree is the potential. Okay, thank you very much. You got that there? You're right, I'll write it down. Okay. So from one seed, look what comes out. Right? And the earth is the one. Right? Although it is covered in the earth, it's covered, it's not left open, it's covered in the earth. The earth feeds it from within. Right? It absorbs all of the sun, what do you call it, photosynthesis, right? And water and whatever it is there. And it nourishes and nurtures. Right? Nurtures that until it reaches its full potential. Whereas the fire doesn't do that. Okay? Number 4. Alright? Fire, on the other hand, is actually dependent on earth, on the element of fire. Why? Where do you derive fire from? 1. 2. Fossil fuels. 3. Sticks, stones, break my bones, whatever it is. Sticks, and you put them together, right? You're getting fire. That's how you discover fire. Fire can't just come out of gas and all of these things. Where do they all come from? From the earth. Okay? Number 5. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has spoken repeatedly about the virtues of earth itself in the Quran. Alam najal al-arda mihada. Have we not made the earth as a floor? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, right? Alam najal al-arda kifata ahya'an wa amwata wa ja'alna fiha rawasiya shamikhatin wa asqaynakum ma'an farata. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, the earth has been made a place for humanity, that it can expand, it can contract, it can open, it can close. So the living live on earth, the dead live in earth. You understand? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about, right? وَالَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about that everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created for you, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states there that there's a lot of barakah, there's a lot of blessings on planet Earth and Earth for us, right? قُلْ أَإِنَّكُمْ لَتَكْفُرُونَ بِالَّذِي خَلَقَ الْأَرْضَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ وَتَجْعَلُونَ لَهُ أَنْدَادًا ذَلِكَ رَبُّ وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ مِنْ فَوْقِهَا وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا وَقَدَّرَ فِيهَا أَقْوَاتَهَا فِي 4 أَيَّامٍ سَوَاءً لِلسَّائِلِينَ. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's a lot of barakah inside it. Why? Well, what happens on the earth, right? That from earth itself, you get the beauty of the world. What do you get? You get the trees, you get the flowers, you get the fruit, right? You get the green grass, right? You get all of those things that are grown under the fruit, the vegetables, etc. All of that comes from planet earth. So it's very productive, whereas the fire is destructive. Number 6, right? More than that, the greatest sharaf and the nobility of the earth is that Allah has chosen the earth particularly to have His sacred house built on it. Ka'batullah, right? Masjid al-Aqsa, Masjid al-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And He has made the earth that place where the Anbiya alayhi sallam have walked. It's not in the element of fire. Fire doesn't have a place, so to speak, when that element is what you might call it? Dominant. The only place where fire is dominant is where? Hell. وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزَّبُورِ مِنْ بَعْدِ الذِّكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا. That this earth, this not earth, will be inherited. عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. Allah even refers to the hereafter as Jannah and so on, then as earth. Okay? So it's like terra firma. So you're not going to have Jahannam there. So Jahannam is there. So how is Iblis? If Iblis is from the element of fire, how is Iblis going to burn in the fire of hell? Isn't Iblis made from the element of fire? So how are you going to burn in fire? Okay. I give you a simple answer, right? I'll give you the story some other time after the what are you made of? Earth. Okay. Who's been here for Hajj? Okay, very good. You're going to Jamala. Yeah. Okay. Stone, huh? What is stone made out of? If I punch you now, you get hurt. Got the point? Simple answer, but you got the point. Alright. Last but not least, or number 9, or I can't remember what it is there. As at best, fire works at the behest of earth. Meaning, fire is firstly in need for its own existence on earth through fossil fuels, etc., etc., etc. But at the same time, all of those things that are grown on earth, right? Fire can be used as an effective instrument to be able to bring out the potential of that. So the earth comes out, and earth says, no problem, right? I will also help you to come into being. So collect all your sticks together. Well, nowadays we have gas. Collect all your gas together. Take all that the earth has grown, put it into a pot, and make food. So at best, fire serves as a servant to what the earth has to provide. And lastly, but not least, right? Iblis says, "I وَخَلَقَ الْجَانَّ مِنْ مَارِجٍ مِنْ نَارٍ." Right? Fire in itself is very unstable. One wind goes, and the fire starts to move. Whereas the earth is very stable. And the third mistake, the last mistake that Iblis made, he said he's only been created from tin. He hasn't been created from tin only. He's been created from water and the element of earth. And element of earth and water put together are very, very potent. Why? Water puts out fire, and earth puts out fire. So on 10 levels, the element of earth is superior to the element of fire, although we have the element of fire in us. It's necessary. But all the element of fire, what the element of fire represents in us, to a certain degree, if not harnessed correctly, can lead to our destruction as well. Therefore, the Prophet of Allah said, when you become angry, what was the first thing he said? One of the things you must do is make wudu. Why? Calm that internal heat. The elements are at work here. Don't you see people get hot? You can actually feel the heat, the temperature goes up, pressure goes up, blah, 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 blah. He said, no. Auzubillah min shaitanir rajim is one thing, but he said, go and make wudu. Why? Let the element cancel the other out. Okay, they come back after Isha. More put it, switch it off. Operate in theta waves, right? So which means that it's at that point where the brain is most receptive in terms of being rewired and being repositioned and refocused and re-engineered. You can use all these fancy new world, new age spirituality terms or whatever it is. Now, how do you rewire? How do you re-engineer? How do you change on a very fundamental level, right? What's happening at that time? And how can you manipulate that to maximize the potential of the brain and rewire, re-engineer that messed up brain of yours? Which has like a whole lot of crazy connections. Just imagine one of the streets in India with all the electrical connections, or one of the streets in one of our shacks out there, and you imagine what your brain is like. Okay? Trust me, in India, like I get very scared when I walk past one of those, those kambas, we call those electric, and you see all of these things hanging on, shit. Anyway, be that as may. The Prophet of Allah, and this is the hadith of Tirmidhi Sharif, the Prophet says it. I'm just going to give it to you in English, right? So it's quicker. The Holy Prophet says, whosoever says 3 times when he gets up in the morning, and this is why I thought about this when I was in Isha now, is that the Quran says after this, Iblis said, I'm better than him. So he said, Ya Allah, Allah said, you are from amongst the cursed ones, but Ya Allah, give me respite to the day of judgment. Why? Because I have become the sworn enemy of the one who made me the cursed one. Right? And he says, ثُمَّ لَآتِيَنَّهُمْ مِنْ بَيْنِ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ وَعَنْ أَيْمَانِهِمْ وَعَنْ شَمَائِلِهِمْ وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ. And you won't find most of them maintaining an attitude of gratitude. So he said, I'm going to attack man from all sides, from all directions. And the brain, to a certain degree, is very, very vulnerable to waswasa. Right? Why? It's part of who. Hey, has anyone had their goodies there, whatever it is, all the gluten-frees and all that nonsense? Have you please? Right? So, why? It's in our nature, in our tabi'ah. Why? Adam alayhi salam himself and Bibi Hawa alayhi salam, فَوَسْوَسَ لَهُمَ الشَّيْطَانِ. So that vulnerability to the waswasat of shaitan is already, we are genetically predisposed to it, so to speak. Right? So the Prophet of Allah said, when you are in that theta state, the Prophet of Allah said, the moment you wake up and your eyes open, and you're still in that, within 2 minutes of you waking up, in fact 30 seconds, a minimum of 30 seconds and a maximum of 3 minutes, you don't even remember what you just dreamt, just 1 second before your eyes open. You forget. Unless you train yourself. Right? So, the Prophet of Allah said, whosoever wakes up in the morning, and he says, أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. Thrice. Now, interesting. Oddly enough, today when I was reading something, or I saw something there, right? One of these, all these gurus and everything, they said you need to do affirmations, right? And repeat certain things at 3, 6, and 9. Right? The Prophet of Allah said the first thing that you do in the morning is you say أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم thrice. It was interesting. They said you say that 3 times in the morning and 6 times at lunch and 9 times at night and whatever it is. Anyway. But the point was, Prophet, أعوذ بالله السميع, I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, السميع, the one who hears, العليم, the all-knowing, من الشيطان. Normally we say أعوذ بالله من الشيطان. Here he said أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. And thereafter recites the 3 ayat from the end of Surah Al-Hashr, which is what? هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون هو الله الخالق بارئ مصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. Imagine how that re-engineers, reorients, refocuses, rehashes. What's the word they say, man? Not restart, what do they call that thing? Resets. When you go to default settings, going back to factory settings. Factory settings. Allahu Akbar. You read that in the morning. The Prophet of Allah says, if he dies on that day, he dies a martyr. And whoever reaches the evening, he holds the same status. Dies to be shaheed. Now, martyr doesn't necessarily mean the one who's being martyred in battle. Alimul ghaybi wa shahada. Right? Where he accessed both the world of ghayb and he accessed the world of shahada. If I'm going to extend them. And the Prophet of Allah says, Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, I'm speaking from memory. This one here I had sent to someone, that's why I remembered I had it with me. This one's in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim, where the Prophet said, when a person wakes up and he says, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lahu, lahu al-mulku wa lahu al-hamdu. That's what I can't remember. وَهُوَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ وَيُحْيِي وَيُمِيتُ وَعَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. And the Prophet said, and then he said, Subhanallah walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. And then he said, Rabbi ghfirli. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ الْعَلِيِّ الْعَظِيمِ. Right? And Rabbi ghfirli, oh my Lord, forgive me. And he wakes up. This should be done every morning. What does he do? What does he do? His affirmation, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu, la sharika lah, lahul mulk. How you reorient it. Instead of being in a state of shirk, which is the mind is inclined to, the brain is inclined to. You first, declare his purity. Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar. Right? You know the benefits of all of them. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. There's nobody has the ability and the power, right, to engage or to engage in any good except through the power and the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody has the power and the strength to be able to abstain from evil except through the strength and the power granted to him by except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. One of the kunuz min kunuzil arsh. La hawla wa la quwwata. Now imagine in that theta state, right? You just rewired and you switched on all of those switches in your brain. What happens? What happens? Now, you may have read this. I'm sure many of you read it anyway, inshallah, I hope so. But the point is, until you don't give one, to our people now, today, morning, oh, check this out, and you gave them the example here that, the theta wave, and you gave them, right? People just don't get the point. Why? We forgot that يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, that we believe, we have blind faith. How's that? يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Right? You can translate it as having blind faith. You get your answer after that, but just do it for the time being. Right? You get one Deepak, and you get one, Guru, this one, and you get that one, and it will give you the, after that you should have, wow. Right? So at the very least, start this. Now what's the time? Alright, done. Next week we start off with Surah Al-Hijr, inshallah ta'ala, right? And we'll continue with the same. Remember, this introduction for next week is that we got the station of Adam alayhi is Khalifa. And Allah granted him a name, Adam. Right? And Quran here in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke about Adam alayhi salam, his name. Again, in Surah Al-Hijr, we start off with the third name of Adam alayhi salam, or the third reference to the human being, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to him as Bashar. As Bashar. Because of his Mubashara. And Bashar literally also means Zahiru Jildil Insan. The epidermis. So that's for our skin specialist, right? The epidermis. So who is Bashar? So he is Khalifa. He is Adam. He is Bashar. And he is one more. See, I told you I forgot. Insan. Those are the three names which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refers to in the Holy Quran in terms of the human being. So we'll start off with Bashar and we'll complete with Insan next week, and then we end the philosophy of the creation of Adam, and then we go on to the history of the creation of Adam. والصلاة والسلام على رسول أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم انفعني بما علمتني وعلمني ما ينفعني وزدني علما. اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Okay, tea, coffee, Fuzail.